Hey everyone, it's Ten Types, and today I'm going to be going over a bunch of your custom cards. I have not done this in a while, and I'm really excited to get back into it, but these obviously are custom cards made by you, the community. These are submitted through Discord. They are not actual cards, and so there are some differences in looking at them, which I will break down in just a minute. But if you want to submit your own cards, and I'll be doing videos like this in the future as well, not sure exactly how often I plan on doing them, but I do plan on doing them more regularly than I which was not very much for a little while there. But it'll be one card per person, except for Discord or for YouTube members, which you can then submit to. My YouTube membership it's a thing. You can get it, and it's a way to support me, and you get a few things. But regardless, we have I think 10 cards, something like that, that we're going to be looking at today. And this first card here, well, actually no, in terms of custom cards. I think the one thing that well, there are a few things to keep in mind. One, I think the power level should be higher, and we'll see that than with an average card. So if you look at a set like Surging Sparks, for example, a lot of these cards are bad or not particularly good or interesting at the very least. Like this Ninetales, really most of these cards are not particularly good or interesting. They're not completely terrible. But you look at, say, like this Oricorio or Volcarona or Simisear or Castform or Victini or Mantane or like any of these cards, and they're not super good. So, custom cards like that obviously also aren't good, if it's the same card. So if you look at the cards that are played, you can see these cards. This is just Limitless, but gives you an idea. These aren't cards; they're decks. But you have the card on the front and all the cards within these decks, and these cards are at a higher average power level. So this is, I feel like, the level at which custom cards should be. Maybe not all at like super high power levels, quite at this level, but something more similar to this than to, like random cards from random sets. And also, custom cards can be a bit more chaotic and weird than regular cards. I mean, they should be in general, and this also means that cards they might have some flaws that are like kind of weird that would be issues if they were actually printed. However, they're fine as custom cards, so I'll be breaking those down. I've looked at these cards. I haven't dove into them a ton, but I've looked at them some, and so there are definitely some cards which I'll bring up those points. But these are definitely really cool. And as I said, you can message me on Discord. Even if you're on this video, then you can still be in the next one. But anyways, the first card here we have is Ho-Oh EX sent in by Wave. This is a basic EX here with 230 HP. It is a Terra EX. It is a Stellar Pokemon as well. That means it has an attack here for three different types, or three different types within its energy cost. But you have your ability here to help you pay that, which says once during your turn, you may discard an energy card from your hand. If you do attach a basic energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon, and you cannot choose a card you discard with the effect of this ability to accelerate. This is obviously, you don't just want to accelerate the one you discard all the time or ever, because then, like, why wouldn't you just accelerate it directly from your hand? And also, this means that you can kind of recover easier. And this is the attack here I guess we need to talk about, which is Grass, Water, Lightning, Rainbow, Quartz Burst, which does 160, and then for each different type of basic energy attached to this Pokemon, put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. So this is potentially spread or high single target damage, or a mixture of the two. It's definitely strong, but I don't think it's broken. I guess I'm trying to think, like, if this is, it depends what format you're looking at with this card in. We're at a weird transition period, like where rotations happened in Japan, but not internationally, though it's coming up very soon and just happened in Japan or relatively recently. So, this with Lost Zone seems like super good and probably broken. Lost Zone's a deck that I have a high opinion of, though I don't actually play that much. And it's not super popular right now, but I definitely think it would be really good there because of course, Mirage Gate is like super good and can get lots of energies, and you want different types. So it synergizes pretty well, and the types are fine within Lost Zone. I don't know if they're literally perfect, but they're definitely pretty good, and so that would be maybe a little too good. But I think this card, ignoring that, is fine power level wise. It takes a little bit of time to get set up. You also do have a Glass Trumpet. I think Glass Trumpet, actually no, Glass Trumpet is really good with this as well. You do need to get the energy in the discard. I believe you will be able to use your ability to based on actual Pokemon TCG rulings, you'd be able to use this to discard an energy if you have none in the discard, and therefore will not be able to accelerate energy to get things kicked off to like kind of start the chain, which is good. So I think Ho-Oh EX is really cool. I think it's fun how it can do different things. Obviously, you have the attack cost here, which is kind of awkward. Grass, Water, Lightning. You really need to be focused in on Ho-Oh EX. This doesn't really synergize with other cards. Um, Trapdos EX, though, yeah, this is the same types as Trapdos EX's Crown Opal attack. That doesn't really matter that much. I mean, Trapdos EX's Crown Opal attack is okay. It's not particularly good. Most decks that are playing it, I assume this one cannot. Oh, wait, can this attack with it? Okay, yeah, so this is a post-rotation deck, can attack with it, and a few decks like that could use it. You look at it with, obviously, it's played with Noctowl, and then it's just using, and like different stuff. Pre-rotation using double turbo energy, and a lot of these decks, or really all these decks that can attack in. The one I'm thinking of where it might be able to would be Lost Zone. But I don't know exactly what types they're playing. I guess if they're playing Pikachu EX, then presumably you'll be able to attack, because then you also have Rating Greninja. So in something like that, you have a little bit of synergy there, but I don't think it matters too much, as the attack on Trapdos EX isn't super strong. It's fine. It's good against a few decks, but regardless, this card is more so its own focus within the deck, and it isn't super strong. Well, actually, it's pretty solid single target damage, doing 250 for 3 energy, so you could have more. So you could be doing 280s, which is a pretty solid number to be hitting. Post-rotation, not as meaningful. Regardless, I think this card's really cool. Nothing super crazy or complicated going on with it, but I do like it a lot. And we definitely like seeing cards like this in standard as well. As the Stellar Pokemon are kind of bad. Oh, they're not super terrible. They're fine. I think they're a fair power level. However, most of their attacks that are good are their first attacks, like or the non-stellar attacks, like with Trapdos EX, Ceruledge EX. Um, I can't think of any others off the top of my head, except for Pikachu EX, which does use its Stellar Attack. This is a card like Pikachu EX, and I believe these are the only two this way, though I could be forgetting something. But they are Stellar Pokemon with abilities, and then they only have one attack, which is the Stellar Attack. So they have to use that. I mean, you could just use the ability on Pikachu EX, for example, but it's not that. I mean, it's a good ability, but anyways, I do like this card a lot. Next card we have here is Porygon Z EX, submitted by Down. This is a stage 2, again, a colorless Terra EX, or Stellar EX as well. And you have 2 attacks here. You have Prevention Protocol for 3 colorless, 180. During your opponent's next turn, your opponent can't play any Pokemon from their hand with an ability that mentions, when, in quotes, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn. And then you have your attack here, your Stellar Attack, Triquartz, which is Fire, Water, Lightning, 220, choose Burn, Confused, or Poisoned, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now affected by that special condition. I'm not super familiar with theming of Porygon cards. Oh, one thing with the Ho-Oh EX, it's kind of interesting, these types. I actually made a video before this, like I kind of recorded this, then stopped and did some stuff with that. But Ho-Oh EX, or Ho-Oh in general, is generally fire types, so we don't see any fire energy here. There certainly are Ho-Ohs that use different types, though. This Ho-Oh, which is a crystal Pokemon. I'm not very familiar with this mechanic at all, but this is Fire, Water, Lightning. So in some ways, fire makes sense. But then there is this Ho-Oh EX with which does interact with fire energy, but then it also uses grass, water, lightning, so that is a type used there. But Porygon is a Pokemon that I'm not as familiar with thematically, because it doesn't have like for example, Ho-Oh EX, its HP like makes sense. Porygon, I'm not really sure how much HP it should have. Um, because you kind of want to standardize compared to other cards. Porygon's HP in standard is like, I guess, a little on the low end, so 310 makes sense. Its typing, I believe, has always been just colorless and hasn't really interacted with other types. I'm, again, really not super familiar with a lot. I mean, I've certainly played with some of these cards and know of a few more, but I don't, they're not stand out to me as some other Pokemon. So I don't know exactly if these are the types that would make sense. However, obviously the Triquartz, there's 3 types, and then there's 3 special conditions. And these special conditions are somewhat associated with types. Obviously, Burnt is associated with fire. And then You also have Poison, which is associated with Poison type in the video game, which is Darkness in the TCG. So if you wanted to stick with Fire, Water, Lightning thematically for Porygon, which as I said, I'm not sure if there's a specific reason for that or not. So down below in the comments, down, or anyone else, if you could comment on that, that would be useful for me. But Poison is associated with the Darkness type, and then Confusion, I associate it with Psychic. I don't really know if that's like right, but anyways, those are the types I'd do. The Fire, Water, Lightning are like classic types and kind of fit Pokemon like this. Um, and then also I associate Water and Lightning with like Paralysis. Paralysis is the best special condition, but honestly, I think this attack is kind of weak. I'd probably give it all three special conditions to be honest, which would be they would have to be because if you don't know, you can have Burn on any Pokemon or on their active anytime. You can have Poison anytime, and then you can have one of either Confusion, Paralysis, or Sleep. So those three types, or those three special conditions, are mutually exclusive. But if you want three types, you need Burn and Poison there. So I could even see it being Paralysis. Paralysis is like strong, but this is three energies on a stage two, so I feel like this attack's a little weak compared to the first attack, which I actually like a lot. It's a little annoying. And also, this is an attack that I feel like Pokemon would never print. This is a little weird. Might get really messy with the other languages as well. I mean, I don't know how messy it would get, but need to be careful. I mean, if they don't print it exactly right, then it doesn't work right at all. So this stops cards though, like Charizard. I believe the wording is exactly right, which says when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon. Oh, it's yeah, no, that's exactly pretty much what it says. During your turn, then blah blah blah. And then that's the same thing for say like Noctowl. I don't know exact. Oh, I guess I can just check. Limitless has an advanced search feature, which is what I'm using. So I'm gonna type this in, and I hope this works with Pokemon. Pokemon has the E with the thing over it. So let's hope this works. And then we'll see what cards this stops. I think that's right. That looks right. So this, oh, it stops Archaludon EX, which is good as well. Just scanning through, I probably should have just done the competitive filter. And then also popped into standard and seeing what this stops. As I said, Charizard EX. Oh, that's not a lot of cards. Noctowl. And Archaludon EX, which is the one I forgot. Espathras, like, not really played. I can't think of the last time I've seen this. And then Eevee does not have that. And that is a um, you play. Oh, it's when you play this Pokemon. It's a little weird the way this works in Limitless. Okay, so I believe it will not stop the Eevee. Or it definitely will not. I believe Eevee doesn't say that. It's just in a different order. But regardless, it stops a few cards. It's a little niche, but it's like super insane against those decks if you get set up first, which won't actually necessarily create for a super fun game, I feel like. But I do like this idea on a card a lot. But with the second attack, I think that one I would definitely uh, buff because it's way more expensive than the first attack. I mean, it's way more awkward, I guess. And then it also is, it's not super strong. I feel like Stellar Pokemon's attacks are generally, as I said, pretty weak. I was talking about that. Even like Pikachu EX, which is like solid, isn't amazing. Same thing with Flareon EX also, or Vaporeon EX or Jolteon EX. But Flareon EX is the one that's most used. Its attacks not stand out and amazing. It's like solid, but it's still a little bit awkward. So I definitely like to see this a little bit stronger. But still a cool card. Next, we have a supporter card from Pyr, and this is a supporter that says Claire's Overwhelming Might. If you did not play a supporter card during your last turn, you may play this card during your opponent's turn. Choose one of the two options. Discard a stadium and play. When your opponent plays an item card, then you discard that card without applying its effect, and your opponent cannot play item cards with the same name for the rest of this turn. A few minor things here. There's supporters misspelled. Obviously, that doesn't really matter. And then along the same vein, it should be capitalized as well as item and item. So, just wanted to point that out for future reference, but obviously it doesn't really matter here. And I know I'm being a little nitpicky. It's not a big deal. But regardless, I wanted to point that out. But so this is a really interesting card and probably the one that I've looked at the most and thought about the most of these custom cards, or at least want to. I think it's really interesting. Also, this video, if you can't tell, it's going to be a bit of a longer deep dive into these cards. But so this is a supporter. It kind of takes up your supporter for the turn. Um, you can play it. You can like always play it if it's in your hand. So you could just pass and then immediately play it. So this is weird. There aren't really cards like this that I'm aware of like at all. I know there's a card. It might have been Regice. I'm just not very familiar with this era of Pokemon. Um, yeah, that's not the right card. I don't know. There's some card that like stops Pokebodies or something like that. Again, I'm just not familiar with it really at all. I know it was used to stop Uxie. Um, I really do wish I was a bit more well versed with older cards like this, so I could compare these cards a little bit better. Um, but again, I don't really know. But there's a card. If you could comment that down below, that actually also be useful. That like stops. It's like countering these. Um, okay, here it is. Wait, no, you can. Um, no, this is not that. This is like similar, but this is not that card. I don't remember what the card is. But regardless, there's a Pokemon. I might have said it by accident, like skipped over it. But anyways, there's a card that like you can play kind of on your opponent's turn. I think to like stop one of their um like in a use of a Pokebody, which is like an ability or Pokepower. I don't remember which one is which. No, Pokepowers are the ones that you use, and the Pokebodies are the passive ones, which is what I was thinking. But anyways, so these cards are not common though. You generally don't do much on your opponent's turn. There are cards like Escape Rope. Obviously, if you get knocked out, and then if your opponent uses like Iron Bundle, then it'll force you to do something, which is send up a Pokemon to the active spot. I cannot think of any other things that you do on your opponent's turn outside of weird things like for cards. I think I talked about Wallace in a recent video, and like Dan. I don't remember if I talked about that. Oh, I talked about the Mr. Mime. So they're like you play rock paper scissors, or you say something like whether you want to draw a card or not. But these things are not common. Is what I'm saying. And they're not usually super impactful. However, this is something that, and I think this needs. I don't know how much talk it's gotten. I know people have kind of asked for things like this, and the reason this isn't in the game is because it slows the game down. You need to be able to play it when you need to play it, and you don't want to. If you're against this card or potentially against this card, you don't want your opponent to have any extra knowledge. So the idea is like you don't want to. So if your opponent's going quickly, you can't say, "Oh, before you played that." Um, what is it like before you play that supporter, actually now I want to discard the statement before you did that, because now you have this extra knowledge, and then your opponent might be like, oh, I don't want to play the supporter, and it gets like really weird. So that's partially why. Or people might just be like really slow waiting for you to play a card that you might never play. So regardless, that was a bit of a long-winded way of saying cards like this are kind of awkward, and not going to really be cards that we'll see in the actual TCG, despite the fact that some people do want them, and they are kind of cool. But then there are these two effects here. Discard a stadium in play. This is something that, stadiums in standard are pretty mediocre in my opinion. They're not bad. They're all right. I want to go, how do I find Scarlet and Violet? I'm sure it's here somewhere, but whatever. I'll look at standard. Looking at these stadiums, the ones that are really meaningful. I think there's a few here. Grand Tree is obviously pretty meaningful. Yeah, that can get bumped. Oh yeah, they all can get bumped, the ace specs. Anyway, so Grand Tree is kind of meaningful. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the men in Japan, you know that Feraligatr is pretty good. It's not absolutely insane, but it's good, and it's pretty dependent on Grand Tree, depending how you're playing it. And then Artizone is also a good stadium, and again, pretty good in Feraligatr and some other decks. Definitely a really powerful one that actually like does stuff. And these are like these active stadiums that have these effects, and then you have stadiums like, and same thing with Academy at Night as well, which is really good in Slowking. which is a legit deck in post rotation. It's pretty solid. I might make a whole video talking about it. I have not really messed with it so far, but regardless, you have stadiums like that, and Claire's Overwhelming Might can do this a little bit before your opponent wants to use the stadium and can really disrupt them. You can do this some point in the middle of their turn, say after they play card to discard the stadium, but before they get a chance to use it, or discard another copy of the stadium. So that could be really interesting. I feel like discarding a stadium, though, isn't as meaningful on your opponent's turn. Like, it can be after they play it as well. So your opponent goes and, plays Area Zero Under Depths, which then you need to get the knockout with Trapghost EX, or which is, just like really useful in some manner. And then you immediately just bump it on their turn before they get to use it. And that becomes really powerful and really interesting there, I think. However, I feel like interactions like that are a bit more niche. The second effect, though, is much more interesting and much stronger as well, in my opinion. When your opponent plays an item, you stop that item, and then they can't play any more of that item. So obviously, a use that would be really strong is Rare Candy, as well as Ball Search cards. Right, these are the best items in the game, as well as like maybe Counter Catcher or Prime Catcher or something. Obviously, you're not stopping multiple Prime Catchers on the same turn or in the same game, presumably, unless something very bizarre happens. But Claire's Overwhelming Might is really disruptive towards certain types of things. Again, like these Rare Candy decks, I feel like Rare Candy is kind of getting really, really hurt in the format right now. It's getting not exactly pushed out, but it's certainly not in an amazing place, and definitely a card that I think people like. I mean, people kind of like stage 2s to be in the game. So this is another card that would hurt those and really target decks that are kind of in awkward positions already, I feel like. If you're like super reliant on a stadium, that's kind of sketchy. Super reliant on certain items, again, kind of sketchy. So I'd like this card. I feel like the two options are a little weird. Again, I feel like the stadium one's a little weak. The item one's quite strong and kind of cool. Maybe substantially annoying. I'm not sure. I do like this card. Again, should not be actually printed, but really cool card. The next card we have here is Magearna EX. This one is sent in by T, who's a YouTube member. So there are two cards here. But the first one is Magearna EX. This is a 220 HP basic Pokemon EX, metal type and normal stats and stuff. Then you have two things here. You have an attack and an ability. Your ability here says Soul Transfer. Once during your turn, you may move up to 4 damage cards from one of your Pokemon to play to this Pokemon. And then you have the attack here, Strategic Shift Gear, which says select an attack from one of your metal Pokemon in your discard pile and use it as this attack. And then in parentheses, it says if you copy an attack from a metal Pokemon with a rule box in this way, rule box Pokemon, if you don't know, our EXs, V-Stars, V-Max is basic Pokemon, V, Radiant Pokemon. Post-rotation, it's, I think, just EXs. I could be like forgetting something, but anyways, there's Pokemon, and then if it is one of those Pokemon that you're copying, you shuffle that Pokemon back into your deck after attacking. Obviously, the idea here is that that was not in your discard pile anymore. So it's not like some upside, it's a downside. One thing, I think this shouldn't be in parentheses. I don't pay that much attention to how parentheses are used in the Pokemon TCG, but I probably pay more attention than the average person. And so I don't know if there's a way to search it out, but parentheses is generally used. I can think of two cases off the top of my head. The don't apply weakness and resistance for bench Pokemon. This is like clarifying something that's already, that's like how Pokemon works. Versus take a look at, say, this Espeon. This is the only card off the top of my head that I can think of that works this way, which says it does 40 snipe, and then also apply weakness and resistance for bench Pokemon, which is a special thing, and it's not in parentheses for that reason. But regardless, then you also have something referring to Rulebox Pokemon. I can't think of any off the top, or I can't think of any in the set off the top of my head. But regardless, you have something like, say, Neutralization Zone, which we were just not really talking about. We were talking about stadiums, and it says, this says both yours and your opponents for stadiums, which is how stadiums always work. And then Pokemon EX, Pokemon V, etc. have rule boxes. And which like doesn't really exactly describe it. Like this doesn't really tell you that Radiant Pokemon have rule boxes, like what is the etc. But anyways, that's how parentheses are used to I can't speak, to clarify things that are already rules. This is not a rule. Anyways, that doesn't really matter. But for anyone, for just people who are wondering about how good this card is or my thoughts on it, but it is something that if you are making custom cards, then that is something to keep an eye out for. Or if you're wondering how actual cards, like how Pokemon decide on things. But anyways, this card is really interesting. Definitely one that I think is fun. Like I think these are all cool cards. I asked for your best cards, and you did not disappoint. However, this card is one that I'm a big fan of. There's actually at least one more card like this that is a copying card. I think these are fun. These are like toolbox style decks. Obviously, this is pretty similar to Regidrago V-Star, which is a very good deck right now. I'd say it's, I don't know, it's quite good. It might be the best deck, and it's pretty similar. We'll be talking about this card again, but this is, obviously a strong attack. I need to look at Metal Pokemon to see exactly how good this is. In current standard pre-rotation, I think it's broken, maybe. Like definitely too good or arguably too good. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know exactly how to look through these cards, but Gholdengo EX is quite good. That's a good card. You have attacks like this is just a big mess of attacks. This allows you to use attacks on like stage 2 Pokemon that are really expensive, things like that. If you played Regidrago or against Regidrago, it uses like Dragapult EX and Kyurem and stuff, which are expensive or stage 2s, and you don't need to pay that cost. So that's the idea here. And you can pay this card itself with a Caledon EX or Metang. That's how I'd assume you'd pay it. And then let's take a look at actually all of these cards. And so we see, that is all of them. So the one that I think is broken is Origin Form Dialga V-Star. There's I forgot there's a Metal VMAX. Metal VMAX. That's not that good. It's whatever. It might actually be all right. Whatever. Oh, there's another Metal VMAX. Yeah, there's Aggron. That one's actually pretty good. Anyways, these are like fine, but Origin Form Dialga V-Star is obviously kind of insane, being able to take an extra turn, which is like super good. Actually, Regidrago V-Star in expanded format is good. I don't know too much about expanded, but I do know that plays Dialga EX, which is very similar to Origin Form Dialga V-Star, having a what's for getting attack that allows you to take an extra turn. It's a GX attack. You can actually play both. Use Star Chronos as well as I don't remember the name of the attack, but the GX attack to take multiple extra turns, and it's funny and kind of silly. But anyways, there's a bunch of good attacks. I don't actually know if it would be broken. Now that I'm looking at these cards, none of these other cards really stand out that much. Aegislash EX is certainly pretty solid, and there's a number of decent Pokemon here. But regardless, this is fun. The attack, there's not too much to get into with it. Obviously, I talked about a decent amount, but regardless, Magearna EX that part is cool. The ability feels kind of random. Once your turn, you move 4 damage counters from one of your Pokemon in play, or up to one of your Pokemon in play to this Pokemon. It heals another one, but it's not adding a ton of tankiness to your deck, even if you do somehow form Magearna EX in play. Then it's dealing 160, which is substantial, or it's like more or less healing. But that doesn't seem broken. And then on top of that, like I don't know, it doesn't really have any synergy with the attack. Maybe there's some intended synergy here. So T, if you have some intended synergy down below, that'd be cool to hear. Wait, this isn't by. Sorry, I've mixed this card up. Have I mixed this card up? This is weird. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, this is by T. You didn't say anything here. So this card, the ability and the attack don't have great synergy, which I feel like in regular like cards, I'd like to see a little more of that, but it is cool. Next so we have is also from T here. This is Scrafty EX. This is a 250 HP stage 1, which is darkness, and its ability Lone Star Advantage says during this turn, this Pokemon's attacks deal 40 additional damage for each trainer card your opponent played during their last turn, and deal 20 less damage for each training card you played during this turn before applying weakness and resistance here. Oh, here's another case of parentheses, which is pretty commonly used as well. Actually, very commonly used. Oh, and if you did not know, there's a lot of me talking in this video. I mean, that's all my videos. But regardless, if you did not know, damage calculations, they're weird, and I don't actually know exactly how they work. There's some really bizarre examples, but regardless, with weakness and resistance, if you have damage modifications from the attacker, that will be before weakness and resistance. Think of, um, like tools that increase damage, double turbo energy, or just other cards that increase damage. They're pretty common. Then that'll be before weakness and resistance, and then you do weakness and resistance, and then effects on the defending Pokemon, like tools that reduce damage, or if you have an attack that says, or if somehow an attack says that they take more damage, which is pretty rare, but you might see, then that will be after weakness resistance. This is mainly with things um, like I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think of metal goggles, which is certainly not in standard, but and there's a good chunk. There's like Rocky Chestplate, Full Metal Lab, or whatever that card's called. So, anyways, that's how this works. But anyways, you have this ability which interacts with both players. Your attack here is kind of interesting. Well, I don't know. It's pretty generic, but it gets really interesting with the ability 150 for Darkness Colorless. And then Gem Cracker is the name of the attack, and you just card energy from each of your opponent's terrestrial Pokemon. This should be Terra Pokemon, but regardless, that doesn't really matter here. But this is like thematics. That's why it's discarding from the Terra Pokemon. However, I feel like it's kind of random and kind of weak. Discarding energies from Terra Pokemon is fine, but not super strong. And I feel like it doesn't really have any synergy at all with the ability. It feels just kind of random. So unless there's super strong thematic reasoning, I feel like I don't love the effect of the attack. I feel like it's kind of, I don't think more stuff is needed on a card, especially like this. This is a really interesting card with the ability, but enough of the effect of the attack. I think the ability is really interesting. The biggest knock against this ability and why I actually hope this never gets printed on an actual card is that it's kind of complicated to keep track of. I mean, I don't know if I'd say complicated, but annoying and a bit tedious. You need to be keeping track of how many trainers your opponent plays, and I don't know exactly how you do this. You could use, I don't know, dice or damage counters or something, which are kind of the same thing. But anyways, you can do that to keep track, and then you also need to keep track of yours, which is kind of annoying, but whatever, right? That's not like a really massive issue, I don't think, for playing with this as a custom card. But Scrafty EX's more interesting thing is obviously how much like this is changing the damage and things like that. Your opponent knows this, presumably would know this is coming, and might just see it in play or know it's coming, assuming that you're not playing in some really weird format. Shoutouts to the cube draft on Tabletop Simulator that I want to do with custom cards, which would be really weird, but I think it'd be fun if people are interested in that. Tabletop Simulator is not free, by the way. It is $20 on Steam. But anyways, Scrafty EX's ability means that your opponent is kind of discouraged to play trainers, which is cool. I like this. Kind of like Trashlands Garbodor, which is a card that was quite good. It was arguably like insane. Oh, that's not how I searched it up. But it's a card that was good. It really discouraged your opponent from playing, specifically item cards, which also include tools at the time. It discouraged them from playing that, and so it didn't stop them though. They could play as many as they want. They'd just be in an awkward situation, and that applies to Scrafty EX. Additionally, if you're like, oh, my opponent's going to one-shot me anyways, you can just play as many as you want. It doesn't matter. And this only applies for Scrafty EX's ability or like its attack. Yeah, so I don't know if this works with technical machines. I'm not, again, like they're a little weird, but anyways, that doesn't really matter that much because the technical machines barely are actual attacks that do damage. But anyways, the ability here boosts that, like your base damage is kind of low. So this is if your opponent just plays a ton of trainers, then that also allows you to play more trainers, but if they just want to play a bunch, then you'll get the knockout no matter what, and there's no penalty for them playing more than that top threshold. Though they, as I said, don't know what it is because then they don't know how many trainers you're going to play. You have to play some, and if you're discouraging yourself from playing trainers, that could be awkward. One other issue that I just thought of that could be annoying would be this could discourage both players from playing trainers, and then the game just kind of stalls out. It's not super strong of an attack here. The game could get boring. I don't think that would happen, but it is a possibility. But overall, I think this ability is one of the coolest I've seen on custom cards. One, as I said, not one that I think would ever actually be printed or should be printed on an actual card, but a really cool custom card and one that I love to mess around and play with. Next card here we have is Ability Patch, Patch of Fate. This is submitted by Zandon, and this is a tool card, an A spec. Also a lot of people, I have like custom card submissions on my Discord server, which is just a bunch of cards submitted by anyone. You can do that. And a lot of them are A specs. I feel like we don't need that many. We don't really need that many more A specs. We have a lot. And A specs, if you don't know, I assume most of you know. But A specs are, you can only play one A spec in your deck. A spec cards, though, there's a bunch in standard, right? So I'm actually going to take a quick look to see exactly how many. There are 29. That is a lot. Wait, there's duplicates. I don't know what these duplicates are. Oh, I guess they're reprints in the newer set. Anyways, so that's a lot of ace specs. You can only play one in each deck, so they're played in some of them just barely get any play at all, or essentially no play, which is a bit unfortunate. So do keep that in mind, and that's the reason why too many ace specs is a problem. Though these are not real cards, but I think that would also apply for custom cards. Anyways, this is a tool that gives the Pokemon this. It's attached to an ability which is called Path of Fate, and then it says, which you can just use. So it says once per turn. Oh, okay. So this is a little weird. So Force Seal Stone is obviously like this, right? It gives your opponent, or the Pokemon's attached to an ability. If you don't know, Path to the Peak, as well as like I think Iron Thorn GX is exactly the same way. This will not stop Force Seal Stone. I believe it will stop Ability Patch Path of Fate. I'm gonna pull up Path, but this says Pokemon with the rule box in play have no abilities. And then Force Seal Stone. So you look at a card like Raikou V was the first one that popped into my head. It has an ability that fleet-footed, which does a thing. Raikou V cannot normally attack Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX as well. And that's because it has an ability that says prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by Pokemon that your opponent's to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon in play that have an ability. I misread that, but you get the idea. So Path to Peak then says they don't have it. So then if that happens, Raikou V can then damage Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX. Force Seal Stone, if it's attached to a Pokemon, it's not going to change whether or not you can hit Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX. Path to Peak does not stop it because it says the Pokemon V this card is attached to can use the V-Step power on this card. However, it's not on that Pokemon. It's on this card, the separate card. And this card is not a Pokemon. It's not a Rulebox Pokemon. I mean, it's an item, or it's a tool. It's not an item. Anyways, so that's not how this card works. I don't think. This gets really weird. I'd probably just make it like Force Seal Stone, saying that it could use the ability on this card is supposed to it gains the ability, because I believe this would mean that then the Pokemon would have the ability, and it would get shut off a Path to the Peak / similar things. Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX would then be walling you. So yeah, again, these things get weird. Pokemon cards are really complicated. They sometimes seem simple, but they are not. But anyways, so you have this ability Path of Fate, which is once per turn you can use one of these abilities. I think it should be one of these effects. These aren't like sub-abilities, or maybe they are. I don't think they are like 3 different abilities. But anyways, you can draw until you have 5 cards in hand, which is quite good. Each player can discard the top card of their deck, which is okay. And then during this turn, your Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So these are obviously 3 different effects here. It's a little weird having this ace spec that does 3 things that are quite different. They obviously interact in some manner as well. I don't know if they don't obviously do that, but they do in some manner. And obviously them being on the same card, they don't all have some form of value. The last one I think is the most interesting, or I don't know if most interesting, but it's the one that it can only be used in certain types of decks. It's bench damage, so not increasing bench damage counters through something like Dragapult EX. But look at the metagame, this isn't like super useful in that many cards. You look at Kyurem and Radiant Greninja, Screamtail, I guess, is like fine. Western Master Ogerpon EX, these cards are okay with it, but they're not amazing with it. I feel like this third effect is theoretically really insane. Something like, say, Spinda, which is 10 to everything, and then really mediocre in just most other situations. Unlike the other 2 effects. Well, the first effect's really good. Dractyl 5 is an ability we see on Bibarel. Bibarel's not played that much. in standard, but it's still good. Certainly fine. Played in Chimp Excalibur, right? It's played in Chimp, right? I'm not just imagining this. Yeah, no, it's usually played. I don't know why it's not showing up here. But anyways, the barrel is, fine. It's pretty good. It's on stage 1, and it has 2 retreat, which means it's kind of awkward. You need to get to the lower hand, so it's not like this ability on a random basic is like the most broken thing in the world, especially just as a 1-up, but it's certainly good. I'd say it's like better than Radiant Greninja. This ability is really insane. Also, post rotation, when you're looking at tool removal, there's not really that much. There are a few like weird options, and then there is Jammy Towel, which I believe is the main one, which is a tool, or no, it's just Stadium, which turns off the tool. And then you get rid of the Stadium, and the tool's back on. So that is something to kind of consider. That's much stronger post rotation. Xandon, I'm actually really interested in hearing whether or not this is designed more for post rotation or pre rotation, and whether it's designed to be able to be countered by Lost Vacuum or designed in a format where that's not in the game. But I like it more. I mean, obviously it's better without Lost Vacuum in the game because that just gets rid of it forever, and you could just use it once and then it goes away. But this card's really cool. It's really good. I like good tools. I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like I wish the game had more. Wish the tactical machines were better. I wish the Seal Stone cards were better. Force Seal Stone's really good. The other two are pretty useless. But the third effect is kind of weird, being so niche. It's not like the most niche thing ever, but it's not something that you really are using in most decks. And a lot of decks can't use at all, like say Charizard EX. You get literally no value out of it. So I'd like it to be. I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel like the first effect, the Dreadful 5, is like really good, really universal. The second effect, each player discards the top card of their deck. Milling Yourself is probably bad, occasionally good. Has some weird synergies that are kind of cool. Mostly it's used as a win condition for your opponent if you're saying playing a control-based deck. I think this is fine. Obviously, you're decking yourself out as well. The first two effects are both actually draining your own deck in different ways, obviously. So I think this is a really cool card with so much depth. I personally don't love the third effect. I like spread deck. My body is tired. But yeah, this is a really cool card here. This is one I'd like to see something like this in standard. This has a little too much, I think, meat on the bones, which is good for custom cards, but an actual card, I think this is a bit much. And also very good. The first one is like super strong, but I really like this card. Next up we have here is Regidrago EX. This is sent in by Depths. I'm in streamer mode in Discord as well, so I can't see the names. But yeah, so this is a card that says it's Regidrago EX, 230 HP basic, and Crystallized Energy is your build. Or I'll start with the attack, which is Grass Fire. Choose an attack from a Dragon Pokemon on your bench and use it as this attack. Obviously, this is pretty similar to Regidrago V-Star. One thing I don't like, which doesn't really matter again, like a lot of things, like small details, but generally attacks that are of the same name have essentially the same effect, either exactly the same or just with different numbers. Apex Dragons from the discard. This is from the bench, done intentionally, but I find it like I'd like to change the name a little bit. Not exactly sure how I'd change it, but regardless. The thing though that is really interesting, I mean, it's an interesting card, but the ability is really cool here, which is once during your turn you may put a Dragon Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench, and then if you put a Pokemon onto your bench this way, that Pokemon can't attack or use any abilities it has. Functionally, I feel like this is super similar to Regidrago V-Star with its attack. The ability kind of like makes up for it, but kind of turns it into something very similar. Presumably this is meant to be played post-rotation without Regidrago V-Star in the format, but I feel like there's a bit too much overlap. Like it feels so similar, with the ability being a really unique ability that ultimately, I don't know how interesting it is. Ultimately, a card like an ability like this, I think would be bad in the actual TCG because it's kind of awkward to track. The things you need to track that in like abnormal ways are cool in custom cards and not cool in actual cards, which this is a custom card. You're putting into play Dragapult EX, stuff like that. To your, Pokemon you want to attack with, then they're just gonna like kind of get stuck in the action. Like Kyurem, that's a 3 retreat. You're never attacking with it. Its ability doesn't do anything anymore. And then these Pokemon are really like generic Pokemon sitting on the board, like the most generic Pokemon in the game. They have no attack. They have no ability. or they cannot attack or use any ability it has. So this will be able to use Force Seal Stone if you put a Guillotine V-Star into play, because Force Seal Stone is not an ability it has, but it would not be able to use that ability on that other custom tool because of Pokemon. But yeah, it's like really. So I guess they still have the attacks and they just can't use them. But then they can't use the abilities that they have. But anyways, I feel like it's so like it makes the Pokemon so boring, and there's kind of like eating up at your bench space, which is kind of the point. Then they can get stuck, and I feel like that'll be like a major counter plan to playing against this, which is like not super fun. Getting random Pokemon stuck, like it's interesting if it happens once in a while, and your opponent's like able to pull this out and do something really unique. If it's happening all the time, I don't think it's as cool, which I think is what'll happen. I think this card's a little too close to a Regidrago V-Star. The Pokemon play that can attack or can't use abilities are cool. I think someone else submitted a card. This was like a long time ago that did one of these things. I think it's kind of fun. I'd like to see be able to still probably use the abilities, to be honest. And then you could put Pokemon into play like Dracoloak or whatever. I feel like Dragon Pokemon don't have amazing abilities. I could be wrong. Again, I just can't think of any that are just like so good. I mean, there are some solid ones. I think that there's a Dragonite with a really good ability. Just gives all your Pokemon free retreat, I believe. Yeah, but play that in something. But yeah, there's definitely like some cool dragon Pokemon, and this doesn't, I feel like this just blends in too much with Regidrago V-Star. You can put like Raging Bolt EX onto your bench. Well, I mean, you just play that one, right? But like Dragon Bolt EX on your bench, and then it kind of sits there. And also Kyurem, you just play Kyurem because you want to be able to attack theoretically or have the ability theoretically. This would allow you to, I think, with the ability thing, you could put like Dragonite Altaria or Dracoloak onto your bench and get a little bit of extra stuff going that way. Yeah, I'm just not this is the first card that I haven't been that big of a fan of. I mean, I enjoy Regidrago V-Star. I think it's cool. But I feel like this could be like this is a little too similar to it. Next card we have here is Lightweight Energy. This card is really cool. This is submitted by Flint. I've seen a lot of special energy cards. This is one of my favorites. And it says, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless. However, you may attach as many lightweight energy as you wish to your Pokemon during your turn. One thing I'm not so sure about with this card is whether this counts as your energy attachment or not. So, like, if you play a water energy, can I play a bunch of lightweight energies? And I don't know. I think the idea is that you just play as many lightweight energies as you want, and that will like take up all your energy attachments. I'd change it to say, I mean, I think it's fine the way it is. I think it's more or less fine if you just add some clarification, like below it, like if separately or whatever. I think it's like, the interpretations. It's not like super weird, or super complicated, but this I'd probably say it should say, for the rest of this turn, you may play any amount of lightweight energies from your hand. To attach as many lightweight energies from your hand to your Pokemon as you want, or something like that. But regardless, I think this is really cool in that way, which I said it would be taking up one lightweight or as many lightweight energies as you want, take up one attachment. The other idea could be attaching lightweight energy to your Pokemon does not use up your energy for the turn. I don't think that terminology is used in actual cards, but I think that's fine there. But anyways, I'm not 100% sure which way it is. I don't really care that much. Obviously, it's better if it doesn't take up your attachment, but I think it does. But this is a card that isn't like super amazing, but it's kind of like double energies. Well, I don't know if it's super amazing or not, but I think this card is really cool. There's not too much immediate depth on the surface of it. I think it's like a relatively simple card to understand, but also complicated to master. I love this card. I don't know. I just really like it. This is one of the first custom. I mean, I've liked all these custom cards. However, this one, I don't know. I just really like it. I like it because it's simple but really cool. This is a card I'd love to see in the actual TCG. Might be a little too good. I don't really know how good it is, to be honest, just looking at it, but it is really cool. I wish I could have spent more time in this card. I spent a lot of time on other cards, and this is, as I said, probably my favorite so far. But regardless, this is really awesome. The next card we have here is Celebi EX submitted by Celery. This is a basic Pokemon EX with 190 HP. It is a Terra colorless, and it has two things going here. You have the attack time jump, 70 for grass colorless, shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached into your deck, which is pretty generic, but fine. And then your ability time lapse. Once during your turn, when you play a stage 1 Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may immediately play a stage 2 Pokemon that evolves from the Pokemon from your hand to evolve it. And you cannot use more than one time lapse ability each turn. I feel like the wording is a little clunky there. I don't know immediately off the top of my head if there's a way to make it better or not, but regardless, it's also like it's pretty similar to Grand Tree, which has like really clunky wording, probably the longest card I've ever seen. But anyways, this ability is cool. Honestly, nothing super crazy going on here. It's a card that allows you to. It's kind of like a rare candy replacement. I think it's cool. Again, rare candy getting a lot of like hate in standard based on the cards that are printed. This is another one like that, but I think it's fine. The attack is also like pretty generic and kind of unrelated. I'm not a massive fan of the attack. I mean, I don't necessarily dislike it. I think it's fine on Celebi as a Pokemon thematically, but I don't think it's super interesting. And it feels pretty disconnected from the ability. In some ways, the ability allows you to like play lots of Pokemon, including like, oh, I can't think of an example in standard, but Drizzle and Talion. Drizzle, stage 1, has an ability on play from hand. And then Talion also has an ability on play from hand, and you can use both kind of at the same time, which is really cool. This is shuffling Pokemon back into your deck. It's shuffling itself. I'd like it to be able to shuffle other Pokemon as well as an option. So shuffle one of your Pokemon, including Celebi, is what I'd like to see. Would make it better. I think that'd be a little more cool and interesting. I don't think it'd be too good. I think the attack is mediocre right now. No, I actually think the attack's kind of bad right now. Not actually useless, but I don't think it's super strong. Definitely not an attack I'd expect to see play. I think it's a really cool concept, though. Nothing absolutely crazy here, but I do like this card. Next card we have here is Professor Dexter's Roggenrola, submitted by Moxie Dexter. This is a card that is an 80 HP basic shot put Slam 60 for 2 colors. This is actually like a little strong. It's not like super good, but it's above like the let's call it the curve of how much you expect, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's not, as I said, super amazing in standard. But then you have the ability Buddy Gift, which says once during your turn, if this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool that has a berry in its name, you may attached. Yeah, I missed a word. You may discard all Pokemon tools from this Pokemon. This is kind of weird. You presumably don't have multiple Pokemon tools, but anyways, this is something that's used in other places as well, I think. But if you do, search your deck for an item card or a Pokemon tool card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. You can't use more than one Buddy Gift ability each turn. This is cool. There's a lot of berry cards in standard. Well, there's 8 or 9 or whatever. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What? I thought there was more. Maybe I thought there was one for every type. I guess there's not one for every type. But anyways, there's a good chunk of these in standard. They're very generic. They're not that good. This kind of gives them an option to be used. I think this is fine. I wish there's a little more depth to this card. I feel like it allows you to like do some different things. It's interesting. You can kind of store berries on this card or a berry on this card and then use it later. I think this is cool. I don't know exactly about the theming reasons for this. But anyways, I think this is a fun card. Not too much to say about it. It's a card that allows you to like get any item, which is like obviously good, but at the expense of having a specific tool or a relatively specific tool that's also not super useful. I think this card's fine, balance-wise, and it's kind of cool. Next card we have, which is the last one, is Galarian Moltres EX. This is submitted by Swax, and this is a card that oh, and I asked for some rules clarification about this card as well. But it has 210 HP basic EX. I feel like this is a little low. Wait, how much HP did Galarian Moltres have? I think that had 220, and then EXs, I think on average have a bit higher HP, so I think 220 would make a bit more sense, but it doesn't matter that much. Also, I think 2 Retreat would make a bit more sense. Whatever, that doesn't really matter here. I was going to say pulling at straws, which is definitely not the right saying. I don't remember the right saying, though, so we're going with that. But the ability Stunning Malice says if this Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's turn before they attack, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. Oh, it did always say that. Oh, I might be silly. Um, um, so yes, before the attack, I guess I misread it. I thought it was, I didn't see the before the attack. So, or maybe it was changed. I don't believe it. No, it was not changed. It's before they attacked. And so if it's knocked out through an effective ability or something like that, right? So um, during the turn, during like the main part of the turn, if they knock it out, then points active, then um, oh wait, it's now paralyzed. Okay, I misread this at first, so I thought it said if this Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's turn. Okay, so I believe it should not have the comma. I think that's why I misread it, though this might be right, and maybe I'm just being silly. But I thought it said that they're paralyzed immediately before the attack, which is like really weird. I suppose like so if they essentially just stopping them from attacking. So saying like, oh, they if it's knocked out, say by Dusknoir, then at some later point, right before they attack them, they're paralyzed, which is not what it says. I don't know why it would say that. I just misread it. But regardless, yeah. So if they knock it out through Dusknoir or whatever, then it's paralyzed. I feel like this is a little niche, but it is cool. Then you have the attacker Envy Surge for Darkness Colorless 240 until this Pokemon leaves play. Put 3 damage counters on it for every card your opponent draws, and for every card your opponent puts in their hand from their deck, discard pile, or prize cards. This is definitely pretty, you'll be taking theoretically a bunch of damage. The attack isn't super strong. This is a downside, obviously, probably, though it can trigger your ability to get knocked out, but your opponent does have control over it, right? So, also if they like play research, you just instantly get knocked out, which is like seems a bit rough. Like I feel like this is pretty consistently going to get knocked out. Then your opponent's active is paralyzed, but they've gotten the knockout on a 2-prizer anyways. And then on top of that, they've been also be able to attack through the use of a switch or evolve or whatever. I feel like this attack's cool, and its synergy with the ability is kind of cool as well. I feel like paralysis is fine. I feel like it could be something more interesting or something more like more complicated, like placing damage counters on them or something. That might get like really messy though. This is certainly cool, and not like super crazy. And then you have the fact that it might not be knocked out, right? So then it's just a really solid attack. 240 for 2 is again not like in my opinion super broken. Like it's stronger than average, and in need of a downside. I'd probably make this 2 damage counters. I'm not sure. I mean, your opponent's not like playing research every turn, but I feel like they're gonna get 7 cards almost every turn. Versus if it's 20, then they need 11, which is quite a it's more, and I don't think they're always getting that, though they can if they push to it. Regardless, I think this card's cool. Definitely not, a little complicated for standard. They're not super complicated. Um, Not one I expect to see, but I do like this card. Obviously, I've talked a while in this video, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'm excited to do some more custom card videos and some more stuff with them in the future. But as said, I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, joining the channel, all the good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.